Now, the federal government may have just had enough of paying subsidies on goods and services to ease the burden its citizens may have to deal with it in the long run, following the deregulation of the oil and gas sector, which led to the removal of subsidy on fuel imported into the country. Final consumers are made to pay or to bear the brunt, while having to pay directly the cost of the commodity without the intervention of government. The same narrative is being shifted to the power sector, now as the government have just announced that come January 2022, consumers of electricity will have to pay more under the new tariff arrangement to be unveiled by the federal government. The government has pegged most of its subsidy payments in the electricity sector at 30 billion naira monthly. While subsidy removal may mean lower cost of governance, citizens whose purchasing power may be under threat of rising inflation and economic downturns have more to deal with. Well, I introduced him earlier. He's the CEO of Cowry Assets Management Limited. He's Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Good afternoon, sir. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, Tolu, and thank you for having me.
Yes. Let me start this way. I know before now we've talked about fuel subsidy. Yesterday I heard removal of electricity subsidy. Now, are you one of those that will say they're against subsidy, or is there another way government can go about this? Because I'm thinking of the impact on the people at the end of the day. We say inflation has been declining for 5 months, and this is going to happen one way or the other. How do we put this side by side? Please let us just get a clearer picture of what this means.
Okay, let me start by saying that managing an economy is a delicate balancing act. The first thing you have to look at, the primary objective of anybody who's managing an economy would be to create an environment that leads to efficient and cost-effective production of goods and services, so that there will be job creation and you have full employment. That's the target of every economic manager. Then, auxiliary to that, you want to have low inflation rates, stable exchange rates, and but first of all, you have to target to grow your economy, and to target to grow your economy, you must have productivity. Productivity will also mean that you incentivize productive activities. And to incentivize productive activities, if you have to grant subsidy beyond providing efficient infrastructure, the subsidy should be targeted at what will lead to growth in productive activities, and not necessarily to incentivize production where you are not growing, not to incentivize consumption where you are not supporting production. Let's look at the issue of power supply, for instance. Today, we cannot produce and wheel out more than 5,000 megawatts of power. In Nigeria today, we're still about 4,000 or thereabouts that we can actually produce, wheel out, that is transmit and distribute. Anything above that leads to what we call system collapse. So the emphasis of the government should be to support the growth or the infrastructure that will lead to higher level of energy supply. If you incentivize consumption by subsidizing consumption, and you are not producing the power, you are not transmitting the power, you are not distributing the power, then what you have is a supply-demand gap, which is not met. The government priority should be, how do we invest more in the transmission grid to strengthen it so that we can wheel out whatever is produced? How do we invest more or support additional generation capacity? And then how do we support the distribution segment of the value chain such that power is produced, transmitted, and distributed to the individual households and companies? If you do that, then you are now dealing with a situation where the consumers can't afford it. That's when you talk of subsidy. But we're not even producing enough power. So even if you pay 1 kobo to get power, you're not getting it. And that's why the priority of the government should not be subsidizing consumption when you have not supported production.
But there is this negative reaction that we're known to in this part of the world when it comes to issues around removal of subsidy. Whatever subsidy it could be, there is this resistance. We know what's happening. The NNPC GMD has come out openly to say more than 100 billion naira is being spent every month to subsidize PMS. But at the moment, even with the PIA, the government is still talking to Labour to be able to get a headway with regards to this. So I'm just thinking, how do we manage these negatives And let's be a little bit political. Many believe that if you remove any government that removes subsidy could become unpopular, in quote.
Okay, let me start from how do we manage the entitlement mentality we have dealt with in this country. You see, if you have a child and you keep giving that child something for free, the child will not have any motivation to work, will not have any motivation to compete with peers, and will be a laggard, will be a weakling. And let me give you, if you're a father or a mother, you know that to stop breastfeeding a child is mostly the mother have to take the bold step to stop breastfeeding a child. Very few children will ordinarily stop sucking on their own. That's exactly the situation we have dealt with in this country. We continue giving handouts to citizens, and unfortunately, the handout is not helping them. They need to mature and develop the adult teeth, but we want to keep them with the meat teeth when they are already adults. Reality is this: most people will not give up benefits that are free. And if you continue to grant benefits to people, you end up developing an entitlement mentality where people who are indolent are waiting for handouts. So the reality that the government has to face up to it. And the fact is that if any government wants to succeed, if we want to transform this country, if we want to grow this economy, if we want to be a productive economy, if we want to create jobs, if we want to reduce the level of crime in this country, we must be a productive economy. And to do that, we must take the difficult decisions. Those difficult decisions will be that we will stop wasting resources on subsidizing consumption and invest those resources on critical infrastructure development that will make us an efficient producer like any other country in the world. Take, for instance, you just mentioned about 103 billion that is spent monthly on subsidizing fuel. That subsidy must have grown because if you look at the price of crude today at about $74 per barrel, you will observe that subsidy, because it's based on the amount of plat, and plat is dependent on crude price. Then add that to 30 billion that you spent on subsidizing electricity, which is not even available. Most of us are still living on our self-generated power. You end up with about 130 billion. Tolu, if we spend 130 billion monthly on just road infrastructure alone, you are going to spend 1.3 trillion naira in 10 months, plus another 2.6 trillion naira. So you're going to spend about 1.56 trillion naira in 1 year on road infrastructure. How much are we spending to do the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road? How much do we need to spend to do Kaduna to Kano highway? If we spend 1.56 trillion naira every year on road infrastructure, in 10 years, the roads in Nigeria will be like the roads in Houston or any other modern country. But we consumed that amount on subsidy for the past 10 years, and we can't show for anything for it. We still don't have power. We're not refining any petroleum products in the country. So the question is that, are we going to continue this way forever? Are we going to bite the bullet once, take the difficult decisions, go through the pain for 1 year or 2 years, and build an economy that will be proud to bequeath to our children? So it doesn't matter whether a government ends up being unpopular, but if any government has the courage to transform this economy, the government would have built for posterity, and history would have judged that government positively.
Or maybe the communication line isn't well coordinated or well carried, because I think Nigerians need to understand the benefits therein. Just like you explained, if these monies are used for other things, we have challenges with health, we have challenges with infrastructure, we have challenges with all issues that we can always address this. But that's on one side. Now, let me also ask you this, because we're talking about the big sector, that's power. And it comes to my mind where we see big players, even big industry men, coming to say that maybe there needs to be a review of the privatization process. Though I don't want us to really talk so very much about that argument, but is there something we are still not doing right? Because like you said, for a country of 200 million people, generating less than 4,000 megawatts, it's unexplainable, despite all of the expenses and what's been coming in, even from the central bank in recent times.
Well, if you look at the power sector, what has happened in the power sector because of turns and twists, failures of on the part of those in the value chain, the government on inside, the those who acquired the discos, to do one or two things at the time they should have done that, including implementing the multi-year tariff order, as well as the discos having enough money to strengthen their distribution grids. The power sector has failed to achieve economic viability. So what we have seen is that there is a huge gap between the cost of producing and distributing power in the country and the rates that people pay for power. Part of that cost is inefficiencies as a result of the failure of the discos to reduce the ATC and C, which was the hallmark of the targets defined in granting them licenses for the discos. The ATC and C, it simply means aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. And you can only reduce this if you have an improved distribution grid. If you meter all the consumers so that people do not bypass the meter, so your commercial losses, your technical losses are reduced to the barest minimum, your collection losses are reduced because they are prepaid meters, and your commercial is also reduced. Because if you do not have an efficient distribution grid, you're going to lose power that is willed to your distribution grid as a result of losses from the transmitters, as a result of losses from the distribution lines. If you do not have prepaid meters, you're going to have a problem with the collection loss. You're going to lose money from collection of credits because some of the people that you would have supplied power to will not pay you. But if you have prepaid meter, they would have paid in advance. And then the problem of running to go and disconnect people and others will be addressed. So for the discourse, unfortunately, we are not able to meet up with the requirement, the threshold that were defined in the concessioning or in the granting of those, in the application of those assets. So that's why sometimes people say, look, there has to be a shock therapy. Something has to give in. It's either you bring in new investors, you create golden shares so that new investors can come in, or you compel them to sell part of their holding to new investors who can bring in capital to inject so that they will have resources to strengthen their distribution grids, acquire the meters. Of course, there are already a lot of processes to ensure that meters are acquired by the discos and distributed or installed for the consumers. If you do that, you're going to reduce part of the problems you're having today. So the challenge we have today is that the cost of power generation and distribution is far above the rate at which people are paying for power, which is why the government introduced the service-based tariff system, so that discos can only increase their tariff based on the number of hours of power supply they give to the homes and consumers. But the key thing is that we need to strengthen the finances of the discos so that they would have the capacity to strengthen, get their transformers, strengthen their distribution grids, get meters to the household, install those meters, and reduce their ATC and C.
The power sector, always very interesting to talk about it. Now, when subsidies, or many believe that when subsidies are removed, maybe from PMS or from electricity like we expect, something should be done to cushion the effect. And that's why Labour and government still keeps talking about how they can help Nigerians at least cushion the effect, the negative effect. Two things I want to ask you. What will be the effect of this on inflation? And what can government do to bridge that gap, particularly in the power sector, when the tariff maybe gets to that real cost-reflective tariff that the discos have always clamored for?
Okay, the impact, of course, will be an increase in the inflation rates. But let me also tell us the surest way to bring that inflation is when you improve the productivity of the economy, which is why Western economies have inflation of 2%, 1%. As long as you don't have productive activity in your economy, you're going to be dealing with what you call a liquidity surface, where more money will pursue in few goods. If you produce more goods and services in your economy and you leave the value or the volume of money in circulation at the same level, you're going to see a reduction in inflation rates. But unfortunately, we're not focusing on that, which is why I'm emphasizing the priority should be how do we improve productive activities. So If, for instance, you take out the subsidy and Nigerians suffer, which of course we're all of us collectively go through some difficulties, some pains, and then that money is used to build highways, it simply means that because you have efficient transport system, infrastructure, you can actually live far from the central business district and come to work either through a public transport system that will charge you minimally because the cost of maintaining those vehicles will come down. And eventually, if you take out the subsidy on petroleum products, you are going to end up with refinery that will spring up in the country, buy crude here, refine, and reduce the cost of shipping the crude outside the country, refining outside with foreign labor, and bring them back with the shipping cost. So you are going to end up with a situation where even the cost of refined petroleum product will come down. They will be adjusted because a lot of foreign dollar-denominated costs that are imputed into the cost of what we import today will be eliminated. Most importantly, the shipping charges and the lead time it takes to take the products out and bring them back. So that's that. But the key thing is this: you're going to have an uptick in inflation, but if we invest the savings efficiently, we are going to improve the capacity of this economy to generate labor, to generate employment. We're going to improve the capacity of this economy to produce goods and services. The additional goods and services that we produce will lead to a significant decline in inflation rates, and will lead us to have a stable, low inflation economy. And then, as well as getting opportunities for people to get employed and earn income to pay the cost of the fuel and pay the cost of power. I've already talked about how we need to strengthen the power sector, so which will ultimately lead, because if you have a cost-reflective tariff, the discos will have more money as long as they address their average technical and commercial and collection losses. They will have more money to invest, and then this additional investment will lead to more efficient power distribution, reduction in cost, and those efficiencies are built into the cost. Once you eliminate those inefficiencies, you are going to end up with a tariff structure that will be affordable.
Now, on a final note, before I let you go, Mr. Johnson Njukwu, the power sector still remains very worrisome to me. I'm still looking at it. Now, what about this issue of willing buyer and willing seller that we had at the time that has made some areas, even in Lagos, outside Lagos, some business districts, we see that they have 24-hour supply and some are paying more. But, you know, can this be replicated all around? What's your assessment of schemes like this?
Well, I'm afraid I think that has been suspended for some time now. It was recently suspended.
Yes, so even for manufacturers, right?
Yeah, the concept of willing buyer, willing seller is so that the transmission, the bulk trader can bypass the disco and sell directly to a person, a company who has the capacity, or a district that has capacity to buy the power at commercial rates. So the power going to a willing buyer does not have to go into the national grid first and then be now distributed or rationed as long as you're ready to pay commercial rates. I wouldn't know what to form the decision to suspend it. But what needed to have been done was to further reform it. And I know that the discourse that where a willing buyer operates has some benefit that will be attached to that power that is bypassing their own distribution network. So what we just need is incentivize the discourse or bring this concept into the entire platform, entire distribution platform, so that discos have an obligation, and I use the word obligation, to sell to any willing buyer and maintain the appropriate terms of the agreement. If the willing buyer is saying I need 24 hours, and the disco have the capacity to sell 24 hours to that district or to that buyer, that they are under obligation to meet that and get the benefit. If the issue is that the discos felt shortchanged because these willing buyers were getting power outside their own distribution network, when they fall, those willing buyers are within their concession area.
All right, there. Finally, and if we are not going to subsidize PMS, we are not going to subsidize electricity, can we subsidize agriculture or some part of the value chain?
Well, my approach to subsidizing agriculture, if the word subsidy is the right thing to use, is for government to build supporting infrastructure. And that's, for me, is critical. Take, for instance, the irrigation channels. If the government can create irrigation channels so that farmers can irrigate their farms, like you have in some parts of the north, in places like the south, where they're only doing one season rice farming, they're only doing paddy rice, you can also do upland rice if those rice farms are irrigated. So the government should just provide the infrastructure. If the government can irrigate some of this arable land, that is enough subsidy. If the government can build rail lines and road infrastructures to make it easy for farmers to evacuate their produce so that the losses at the farm gates are reduced to the barest minimum, that for me is the kind of subsidy we're talking about, and not handouts.
Mr. Johnson Chukwu, thank you very much for your time. It's always interesting talking to you, CEO, Cowry Assets Management Limited. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.